It is my privilege to introduce Alex Johnson today to Ogden Job Team. I'm excited. He's a risk taker. At least that's how I see it. He just started Elevated Career Services. Kind of does what I do, but helps other people. And so, one of the things that I thought was really cool, and this is where I think he's a risk taker. I think it was about 2017. Alex will probably correct me, but he was bold enough to ask SpaceX to come to the Davis Conference Center. They showed up. He got BYU, University of Utah, all the colleges, and a couple of us. He let us come and have lunch with SpaceX. Alex, it's all you. Thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Can you guys hear me? Just want to make sure.
Yep, loud and
Okay.
clear.
So I'm in Park City this morning. I've got some clients that I'm meeting with, and I'm sitting in one of these antique historic gondolas, I guess. Um, so yeah, it's at times like this where I hear everybody's individual struggles and everything they're going through. It's a sacred thing. It's a sacred space, because this is where you're growing outside of your comfort zone. Um, the journey is not easy, for sure. As you're going through this experience in your life. So me and Steve, we have some history for sure. We go way back. So I'll tell you a little bit about me, and then we can jump into the discussions. So I have 5 years at Department of Workforce Services. I started my career and graduated college during the recession. That was a difficult time, I think, just to get out in the environment, try and find job opportunities that were available, which there wasn't. Um, and the government picked me up at Workforce Services in Ogden. I was living in Utah County at the time and found out I had a talent for working with employers and trying to help people get placed. During that time, got a lot of awards, a lot of different successes, and moved on to um, Davis Technical College. I oversaw their career services and placement for the trades. Did that for 5 years. That's where Steve and I connected. We had SpaceX involved, where we were able to meet with them. We were the only higher ed institution that had that partnership with them and was funneling composites workers for the Falcon rocket. I've placed about 21 people with SpaceX during that time as they were growing and expanding. Now they're at such a large organization. They're sourcing from all over the United States and all over the world. I did have the opportunity to go to their uh, mission control in Hawthorne, California, and see two launches and be a part of that experience. After Davis Technical College, I went to Utah State University and got my master's in HR. Completed that and moved on into the energy sector. One of my niches, well, I have many different niches, but it's government programs and grant writing. And during my time at Canyon Pipeline, while I was there, I wrote several different second chance hiring grants and received them for that organization and decided to kind of split off from there. I was there for about 2 to 3 years and became an HR consultant with Your Employment Solutions and several other different companies. And that's when I started Elevate Career Services. We are a contractor with the state of Utah for placements. So as people and individuals with disabilities through vocational rehab find themselves in trying to find employment, they are referred to us, and we go out in the community and we help make those placements. Steve and I share a lot of the same skill sets. I find myself, in my HR career coming back to placement services. Um, That's just a talent that I've got and something that, and also just a um, desire, not desire, but drive to help individuals that are trying to find those opportunities, get them back into the workforce. It's, being a part of this group and hearing your guys' individual stories. It definitely has a soft place in my heart as you're going through these different trials and trying to have interviews, trying to complete these applications, not hearing anything back from recruiters. Um, yeah, that all resonates with me. I've been there myself. Um, but as we're working with people with individuals, if you can with disabilities, if you can imagine, their struggle is even harder. Anytime an employer hears disabilities, they think, "Oh my gosh, I got to go through ADA." You know, there might be accommodations that I need to go through and do for this individual, and we have to leverage a lot of resources that are available free, you know, even to all of you, to help open doors for these disadvantaged job seekers. We've worked with engineers. We're actually our niche is the higher end, higher executive level type positions. We just placed someone last week with Barracks Imaging, electrical engineer type position. Um, but that's kind of our niche, as we've worked in higher ed for quite a few years, helping new students or individuals that are trying to gain experiences in these higher level positions. We've been able to build those relationships of trust with employers and have those conversations to help create opportunity um, for those that we're serving. With that, that's my background. Before I dive into anything, I'd love to hear, is there anything particular from this group that I can pinpoint or share experiences that I've had or even connections? What things can I help you guys with and gals with today?
Hey, Tony, you first.
Yeah, I'll take one. I'll take the first question. You touched on something that's kind of near and dear to my heart too, Alex. With the disability side of the things, I wouldn't say I have a physical or mental disability, but when that question comes up on every application, there's yes, I have or have had a disability in the past, or no, I do not have, or I would prefer not to answer. Right? Those are the three typical answers on every job application that I've applied for. And when you look through that list, there's a couple on there that are questionable, that in my head, either they are or they are not. And I will be public on this one. I suffer from migraines, and they are bad. Anybody who has migraines understands the severity of it, and it can be nasty. So I've actually asked Steve that as well. What should I put? Like, what should I answer? Yes, I've had or have. But then when you said ADA requirements, at Wells Fargo, I wouldn't say it gave me any edge or whatever on the thing, but it was enough to allow me to have remote access when, and this is probably revealing a little bit of cards here too, with the hybrid office mandates back in the office, the migraines and a doctor's note and submitting all that information got me to stay home more than it did going into the office. And so to my mind, you're resonating a little bit with accommodations. But on the flip side of this, I'm so desperate to get a job right now that I'm not going to disclose anything, like just to get myself to get the application and get hired. So I'm presenting you with a nasty question. There's two sides to it. Do I answer, yes, I have a disability based on what I just told you? Or do I say, no, I don't, just so I can get past the requirements of the ADA stuff? Crazy question. I'm sorry.
No need to apologize. I'm glad you asked that question.
It's a great question.
Um, let's go ahead and tackle that one, and let's take some more questions. Um, in my experience out in the industry, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to be very transparent.
Nope,
There
that's
are,
what we want to hear.
yeah, there is discriminatory practices that happen out with different businesses at different levels, and each one is different. Um, there's been times where I've had our individuals with disabilities definitely disclosed because I had that relationship of trust with that employer's HR department. Where they're like, yes, we're fine. We can work with people with disabilities. There have been times where we've had individuals without or with disabilities on their application say they didn't. Went into the interview process, got the job offer, and I've never had an HR department come back and say, "Hey, wait a minute, you didn't disclose on the application that you had a disability." That has never happened to me. There wasn't any kind of negative recourse from that saying we're not going to hire you. I haven't seen that. Now, once, when they're doing the interviewing process and they're looking at the individual, they're looking at can they do the job? And that is the recruiter's biggest concern. Can they do the job? Once they get to know you and conduct the interview and say, yes, we want to go with this candidate, you get the job offer, coming back and saying and being open with them, saying, I was afraid of discrimination, if I did disclose. Now that, we are at this step in the process of getting a job offer, I would like to share, some of the disabilities that I do have and see if there might be some conversation here that we can have, for accommodations. Again, in my experience, I haven't seen them say, well, we're going to pull back the job offer now because that we can't deal with that, especially with yours. I think with migraines. Now, if it was something more severe, you've really got to look at that um, on a case by case basis as far as when you're going to disclose if it is severe enough, like where maybe you have seizures um, on the job. Now, that's something that
Yeah,
you
none of those. Like it's just the typical migraine where it just, and anybody who's suffering from migraines, I'm 100% on your team. They're just bad. But no physical ailments other than I have to just take a break.
yeah,
those kind of
that's
deals. And so
see on a case by
that's the
case
biggest thing.
basis that is a very light disability.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. That's why I wonder what should I say? Just put no and then just let it ride.
You could, yeah, because I mean, technically, there's different definitions of disabilities as far as migraines. It's not like seizures,
Right.
Down syndrome, or any of those other types of disabilities that may be there. Um, but you could put no on there and say, hey, I want to do this on a case by case basis. I want to be careful a bit on discrimination. I don't see any HR department saying, whoa, we can't accommodate that, or even retrieving or pulling back a job offer just
Right.
for migraines.
I guess
Um,
my biggest concern, and that I've always worried about this, is that by putting yes with the amount of applications that are being submitted these days, it's just one more checkbox to kick you out to the no box. And so I think a lot of that, I'm careful. I'll put it that way. I'm careful how often I select it, but appreciate your time.
there is some recourse for the employer. Like once you get the job offer, if they withdraw because of your disclosure of disability, that opens them up to liability
Oh yeah, I'm
on
sure.
discriminatory practices.
I
So
don't
they're
think I'm
less,
getting that far. I think they see that and they go, that there's too many and there's a check box and I don't even want to mess with it, and they move to the next one. I don't think you'll ever be able to prove it, sadly.
yeah, yeah, which is correct. And I think your disability is very, very light. If we're talking just migraines, where it's not a kind of something that causes seizures or something that impedes your
Yeah.
ability, where you
Right,
just
right, right.
need breaks, I think you're more than fine to say no because technically it's not um, what
I
would be
used it.
considered.
I used it at Wells Fargo, and this is sad to say, but I used it to keep me from going into the office. Um, it it's ridiculous that this return to the office, and I'll just say it out here in the public, it's ridiculous for the type of technology that's out there for people that don't need to be in an office to go into an office and sit on your phone and be on a conference call. Um, it is beyond mind-boggling to me that we are still at that stage of careers where we think it's more important to sit in a cubicle and put your headset on and sit on a video conference call 8 hours a day when you could have done it at home. And I don't think I'll ever understand it. Sadly, it's where we're at. I get it, but I worked remote 19 years, so you're not gonna you're not gonna convince me that I couldn't do my job either. But anyway, I appreciate your approach on that, and if nothing else, thanks for coming. And hopefully everybody else will say that as well. But we do appreciate guys like you that come and talk to us. You give us a fresh insight of what's out there, what people are doing, and what they're looking for, and I applaud it. Like, thank you for your time. I know this is busy on your schedule as well, so thank you.
Wow, I appreciate that. Thank you for those comments.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say, you have a comment there. I was gonna say who's next, but go ahead.
Well, thinking about the disability stuff, and especially in a tight market right now where we're looking at, I'm just going to say it. I feel that we are in that recession type environment. As we've been going out, we've seen over 120 applicants per job, if not more, even for entry level positions. And those that we have with disabilities that say they need a job coach, somebody we have to send with them to help them learn the job. We do disclose that they have a disability, but we try and reach out to the HR department before the application process happens to see if it's soft soil for them. If they're going to reject the application, then we're not even going to mess with them. So it's a lot of research in our end, trying to build those relationships of trust and see any jobs that you're looking at. And the gentleman with the migraines, as you're going through and looking at employers, do that research on LinkedIn, see ask an HR guy if you can find an HR on LinkedIn for that company and say, hey, I just want to learn more about your company and your open positions. Start it up with that conversation. And then as they're opening up and discussing it, say, hey, how do you guys do with people with disabilities? Not, that I have any, or if you want to say that, but, just in friendly conversation, seeing how they deal with it. And more 9 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, we believe in that. Hey, I've got somebody that's got this disability in my family, and we do everything we can. You now have an ally, someone in their HR department that can help you. Now, getting to that point, I know because they're pretty busy, just keep knocking on that door. We bring bags of popcorn to all the employers that we work with. Understanding that the receptionist also is the gatekeeper, bring her popcorn, bring her something, and say, hey, I'm just want to learn more about your company. I just want to learn more about what you do here. And if there's a chance for an interview, to learn more, I would love that. I can't even tell you how many times that's opened up doors. Just bringing donuts, popcorn. We have 2 companies that sponsor us that provide Spudley Donuts and Lisa's Popcorn. And we use that all the time to try and open those doors. So just some additional thoughts. What question do you have, Steve?
Oh, I was just seeing who else had questions.
I have one question here. This is Roger. What happens if you click on you don't want to disclose it, that you have a disability?
You're legal to do that. And again, this is that pre-employment phase. You are more than within your rights to say, I don't want to disclose at this time.
And will that actually have a negative effect on you trying to get an interview?
We got to come back to that. It's on a case-by-case basis. Like I said, there is discrimination that happens out there. And there's some companies that are totally open to it. So it's on a case-by-case basis with the employer. Do some research, kind of take a look at them. Let's say if it's Microsoft, go in and research, does Microsoft work well with people with disabilities? Do you have a current disability that you have as well that you're?
Well, I have diabetes, so I'm concerned about that being, a negative thing with trying to get an interview or get hired on.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I was pre-diabetic myself, and it can create fatigue. What kind of accommodations would you need from an employer if you were to get hired? What would you be looking for?
Nothing. I don't need any accommodations. I was also I had broke my neck in 91 too, so I have limited um
Mobility.
limitations, abilities, but nothing that would prevent me from doing my job.
So this would be my recommendation to you, where you're not asking for any kind of accommodations. You're going to be working just the same as anybody. I would put no. If you have that fear, yep, put no. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, if they asked about it, say, I don't need any accommodations right now. I do have diabetes, but I don't need accommodations. Later on, you know, once you get the job, let's say a year down the road or something, something comes up where you do need accommodations. You're more within your legal rights to come in and say, I would like to have, you know, a discussion about some disabilities that I've recently um, have been having issues with. Um, I've never had anybody come back and say, well, you disclosed before you were hired that you didn't have any disabilities, so we can't help you, you know, or we're not going to hire. I haven't had that happen. Um, I think we're just looking at the interview process, right? Getting in front of the recruiter or manager to get that interview and job offer rolling. Where you don't need accommodations, I definitely say no at this
Okay.
point.
Okay, thanks, Roger.
Okay, a question I have, what about dyslexia? I do have it and I'm certified many times over.
Okay. And would you require or ask for accommodations as well?
I have a couple times and it's never, what Microsoft, it never turned out good. At Whirlpool, it did. So the accommodations were a quieter workspace. So, you know, my brain could think, and my accommodations today would be that I have an AI tool and Grammarly to help me in my writing so that things go out clean and not kind of backwards sometimes, because that's the way my brain thinks. So I never check that box. And
Which one
the
that you
one
do have?
about the disability.
Do you put no, I don't have a disability, or I choose not to disclose?
I choose not to disclose
Yeah.
because I'm just afraid. It's a marketing job. They're not going to get it unless they only get it if they have a family member or know somebody who has it. Otherwise, they're like, don't understand it. But so I don't know. And I don't know when to disclose it when I'm on a job or I just don't. And I just, you know, persevere and suffer, you know, through that and just keep working harder than anybody else.
No, I think with that, you know, you are safe to say no, I don't want to disclose. Again, once you get the job offer, you know, that's the time where you can discuss, you know, any kind of um, disabilities that you may have, like dyslexia. I hate to, because I know there's a lot of good companies out there too, where you do check yes and they're okay with it. But where it's such a tight job market, there's a lot of apprehension and fear
Yeah.
around checking that um, to disclose that you do. And legally, you don't have to at that point. Um, yeah, a lot of times, like for our higher end engineers, we don't disclose at that point. We've had quite a few that have depression, anxiety to such an extent um, where they do need some additional supports. But like with Varix, we did not disclose. He went through the interview process. He got the job. Later, we came on board and said, "Hey, by the way, he's eligible for all these programs, like supportive programs." And Varix opened up to it. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's great. On the job training options, you know, where the state may pay 50% of the wages. Yeah, we'll explore that." We didn't think they would, to be honest, because they're an international company. They're huge, just massive. But there was some interest there, and we were surprised, and we developed that relationship. Um, again, legally, you're not required to disclose at that point where you're filling out the application form. Um,
So does Wyoming
um,
have a program like Utah? Because
yeah,
that seems like a pretty good program. How would you find
yeah.
about that?
So these are federal dollars, right, that are passed down to work with people with disabilities or even with employment. There's several different funding streams that come from the federal government that's approved by the by Congress. So we've been watching it with Trump to kind of see if he's going to downscale those. We have not seen that because it does take congressional approval um, to limit those fundings, but it comes down to each state. Now, each state gets those funds and then they distribute those programs, and they'll add, or they can't take away from the requirements, but they can add to it. So through, like, ours is called the Department of Workforce Services. Nevada is similar. They have a Department of Workforce Services as well. I think Wyoming, I think yours is closely named there as well. But they have several different programs like that, especially for people that are out of the workforce and trying to get back in. You might want to take a look at those.
Yeah, I
Those
will. Thank you.
resources.
Thank you. I'm working with them right now to rewrite my resume so I can get just a basic job, which is tough when you haven't done that since college.
Now, are you certified dyslexia? Do you have
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, that may qualify you for disability services for employment, where you can get a specialist like me at my company, where we would come in and coach you and go to career fairs with you, weekly check-ins, and employer relations type options.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet. And I appreciate your vulnerability. Everybody on this call just sharing, what you might be facing. I appreciate the vulnerability.
There are a couple of us also on this call who have a related disability called aging.
Yeah.
Gray
More than
hair.
a couple.
I wasn't going to bring that up, Mike, but I appreciate your vulnerability. But yours is a little more vulnerable visual than the rest of us.
Yeah, I'm not as old as I look. Never have been.
That's what they always. Just kidding.
That's what they always say.
I wish there was a button.
I put you next, Mike.
I wish there was a button that they could just say, "All old people, please apply." Just anyway.
Steve put me up next because he's afraid I'd keel over and die before getting to it.
No, it was only when you came back from Japan. I was worried about you then. You were pretty sick.
But Alex, I go skiing, bicycling. I mentioned earlier, cleared a little more than a quarter of an acre of brush. So, I'm physically active and mentally active. But I get on these video interviews or anything like that. They see, I guess I shouldn't light the hair from up above because it looks like I got an angel's halo, so I'm already dead. Whatever. It doesn't bother me when my son says, "Dad, how does it feel to be older than dirt?" But so but in a job search situation, any suggestions?
Oh man, there's a lot of strategies for this, right?
Oh, I need to start writing.
Ageism and age discrimination, again, being transparent, it's a real thing. Companies are doing it even at the high level. We've had some here in Utah that have been investigated by the EEOC for that. Where you didn't think that would happen within the interview questions, they're asking illegal questions. It's definitely something that we need to be aware of, and something that we need to have a strategy and a plan to work on. That starts with your resume. What have you done with your resume? Kind of tell me on dates, high school graduation, education. What have you put on there so far?
No years on those, and I only disclosed the last roughly 20 years because that's 2 jobs.
It's 2 jobs. Okay, Steve, what you've been helping write resumes? I'm assuming you've helped this gentleman with his resume.
Oh yeah, he has many versions of his resume, but the bottom line is, the current coaching is 10 to 15 years or what's relevant, depending on what you're doing. And we did talk about this a couple weeks ago. Unfortunately, I did not make good on it. So those who can ping me and tell me, nobody pinged me yet and told me I failed them, but about when Janelle spoke, we talked about
Functional.
more of a functional, and I have a really good functional one that it's on a book, and I can still send that out to everybody. But I also someone created one. I was looking for one that didn't have any issues in it, and I couldn't find that, and I got busy working with clients. But that's the what I hear most. The hardest thing is some of the greatest stuff we have. We lose that when we only go back 10, 15 years. And that's when we have to maybe come up with what I would say after the current style we're seeing is a summary skill section. And maybe that's where we add a highlight reel of some of your accomplishments. So people go, wow, before they get into your actual experience. That's my current coaching. I don't know. I think everybody.
Steve, no, that's good. Functional or hybrid, right? Between chronological. I do quite a bit of hybrids. Um, Looking at, the summary statements and then showing all of the accomplishments in that top section. We had an interesting experience between the Utah U of U healthcare and Granger Medical. We have a medical biller and coder specialist. She's older, that we're trying to place right now. And Granger said, we want 2 pages. And you can put more if you want. And we're like, because she didn't get an interview because we submitted a 1 page. And we thought, wow, that's okay. And then the U of U threw some at us different. Well, we only want 1 page. It doesn't matter how much experience you've got. We just want it down to 1 page. And we just like, my goodness, the employer relations portion of this is so important. Getting the feedback from those target employers that you're trying to get jobs with, which just adds more work to you guys, as you're trying to find employment, or you just want to do the application, get it submitted, and move on maybe to the next because it's so time consuming, that process. The best suggestion I can get is to pick those top 3 employers that you really want to work for. Try and get those connections and feedbacks with the hiring manager and say, what do you want to see? See if you can get an informational interview with them to see what they're looking for in those resumes so you're not spinning your wheels, and say, hey, if I'm a little bit older, what would you like to see? Are you okay if I disclose, this information? Really, I know it's going to be more work for you guys, but if you're able to get an informational interview with anybody there that's close to HR, so you can navigate those roads, you're going to see a lot more success in your interview. You'll see it tick up and start to get more of those interviews. So that networking piece.
That's actually Mike's forte. He likes to apply for a group that he has to do the one-way interview, and he gets rejection, and then his insiders get him an interview on the same job. So yeah, that's his specialty because he has good insiders.
I think that's the only way you can survive in a recession type environment where, before they just hire anybody that could fog up a mirror a lot of times, because they're so desperate for people. But now where they have over 200 applicants, they've got a really big pool, and getting those informational interviews is pretty, again, it needs to be standard as you're trying to find these job opportunities. Take them out to lunch if you can. That's what we're doing for our clients, and also I've done for myself, is, hey, do you have a minute where I can take you out and just ask you some questions? There will be other people because it's a tight market trying to do the same thing, but it's not as many as just apply for a job and then leave it alone.
Well, it's risky too, because what could happen? They could be rejected. So yeah, I think that not that many people do it.
Yep. So take that risk, right, Steve? That's what we're talking about. Take the risk. start those conversations. And what do you have to lose, really? It's you have more to gain than to lose on that because you're not officially interviewing, but this person may not be a decision maker either. Um, they're just giving you the insights that you have or that they have.
So
I'm
Mike,
a
that
little bit
answer,
worried sometimes, because my resume does show executive experience as well as depth and research and stuff like that. I apply for positions that are senior positions in a research setting, um, and folks are looking for, some particular targeted background thing. Well, I've got everything that surrounds that, and I can do that stuff easily in my sleep. But I don't mention specifically that, I designed the user interface for a piece of software. So I don't get the user interface research position, even though I, got the got all the parts and pieces, and even teach it at a university level. So yeah, I can deal with rejection.
Tell me a little bit more. So research, you're higher ed, right? So you're working with
hey, teaches
universities.
at BYU.
He's teaching right now.
hmm
Okay, and what kind of position is he looking for?
So I until end of last year, I was running research globally for a Fortune 150 company called Fiserv. In fact,
Yeah, I know Fiserv. Yeah.
Tony's company was a wonderful client of Fiserv. Um, but
I'm still trying to get a job with Pfizer, Mike. So maybe we need to connect afterwards. I've
There
got a
you
couple
go.
applications sitting in there,
you
silly
tell me
queue.
who you're talking to, and if I know him, I'll call him.
Oh, well, we're going to touch base after this.
Okay, good.
There you
Um,
go.
and so anyway, so it's I've got the academic education. I'm current on it because I teach statistics and research methods at the upper division level, and I've got the strategy level experience. And
What's
Nice.
so
your what's your education level?
it's only a master's degree, but that was just the beginning of learning. So at this point, I have great conversations with PhDs, and sometimes I'm sharing things with them that they don't know, and sometimes they're sharing things with me that I don't know. So, I could say PhD equivalent because I didn't stop. In fact, I just yesterday, no, 2 days ago, I ran into my old thesis advisor, and you think I'm old now. This guy's been around a while, but I told him about a research project that I designed that would make most PhDs quiver in their boots. But because this guy taught me some really wonderful things, it doesn't bother me at all. I can crank those puppies out on the regular. So, but that said, um, it's more advanced than most people even know exists. So I don't know how to address that, whether I share it as a story, whether I put PhD equivalent on the resume, which I don't have right now, um, or whether I humbly bow my head and say I will do what you asked me to do.
So you're working part-time right now. Are you adjunct or like
Mhm,
okay? I know within higher ed a lot of times, like for the upper levels, they do require a PhD.
mhm.
Um, in the private sector,
Yeah, they don't.
they don't. And this is a strategy. If you were one of my clients, this is probably what I would do is if your goal to go into higher ed and get more of a permanent position, or are you okay to look into the private sector?
I've been private sector my entire career, and then education has been kind of a side passion for me.
Side gig. Gotcha.
Mhm.
Okay.
And sometimes it's just, I get clients like the Ohio State University or even the Bexley Education Foundation or American Association for Employment and Education, or now working part-time for BYU. It's just, it's part of my giving back.
No, that's awesome. So a strategy, if I was to take you on as a client, we would pick those top three private sector jobs that you definitely want to be a part of and work with them. On that top 3 tier, we would start investigating who are the contacts, who do we need to look at to move the needle towards at least an interview. Now, this could last up to 3 to 4 months where we're trying to build out these relations. We would also use ChatGPT to look at the job descriptions and then also have it look at your resume and get feedback and say, what is going to work here? What are you seeing from my resume and the job description that they've posted that we could add into the resume that might help us get an interview?
So I've done a fair amount of that. Sorry, I don't mean to take up so much of the meeting. It feels like I'm
You're
being greedy here.
fine.
I've done a fair amount of that, and one of the things that I asked GPT to do is take the job description that I paste into the query and my resume that I attach, and I ask it to score the resume against the
There you
job
go.
description for a match and to report the score as a percentage. Now, frequently it starts out around 70%, and then I tweak the resume until it's 92 to 95%, and then I submit. And so far, what I'm hearing back from a lot of HR folks is at that point they go, "This looks like a GPT resume," and I just don't
Yep.
have time for that.
Yep.
Okay. So let me ask you this, because yeah, you want to refine it, and ChatGPT is okay to use. I mean, it's up to a point, right? If they can, because each company is different. Um, how's your contacts with that company that you wrote that resume for? How many do you have, and have you met with them?
I've got 3 very active contacts at my main target organization, and they have hand carried my resume to hiring managers, to HR, and I get the video interview, and then nothing. And it's a one-way video interview. I really just have gotten to the
Yep,
point
those
where I
are fun.
despise those. Yeah, that's not the word I'd use, but
I'll just chime in real quick and say every single thing Mike is saying about this entire thing, at least from my experience, and I see other nodding heads in the gallery, this is all extremely common.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think my comment to that, and especially, what we see as well with our people that we're coaching, is persistence. Persistence has paid off for us. I can't even tell you, rejection after rejection, we kept knocking on the door. And we had one company that did deny one of our people. We stopped in person, met with the secretary. She wasn't very nice to us, but we said, hey, we feel like we've got a good match for you guys and that this is a good place for him. She's like, all right, fine. You guys have called a lot. Let me go get the manager and you can have a discussion. She went and got the manager. I sat down, talked with the manager, and said, hey, we're being persistent because we feel like your company is a great match. Now, this is a smaller company. They only have 32 employees. For larger companies, sometimes this doesn't work. But she came in, we talked, and we found out we had a lot in common. Through that conversation, she scheduled an interview for our person, which was 2 weeks ago on Tuesday, which they hired. They also signed up for our HR services, so we are taking over all of their HR functions.
Nice.
We're taking over employee relations. We're taking over everything for them. We just signed the agreement with the CEO last week, and we are now their PEO provider.
nice.
That was persistence. We just kept knocking on that door, and I think in whole, when you're getting those rejections and they're not getting back to you, we've got that with UTA right now, Utah Transit Authority. They did the video, have not heard anything back in 2 weeks. We do have an inside connection. I've been following up with him. He's like, she's been really busy. We got over 120 applicants. I'm like, I understand. Let me know when you hear something. We go to every career fair. We meet with the Utah or UTA recruiters. Hey, this application we submitted, have you heard anything?
Mhm.
No, we haven't, but oh, contact this person. And we'll just keep knocking on the door until when they open a position, we hope our face is the first one that shows on their brain.
I've been
'Cause-
persistent enough that I've had people request that I stop. Now, it doesn't happen
That's
often,
good.
thankfully. And Carol will, she might appreciate this little story getting into Microsoft.
Ah,
You know, I was in a sales role, and so I just started networking into Microsoft, and I'd have a meeting with this person. I'd learn what was important to them, and then another one, and another one, and another one, and then by the time I'm on my third or fourth person, and now I'm connecting that person to somebody else in the organization
they
that
don't even know.
yeah, that they didn't even know, and that has a similar or has a solution to their problem. And anyway, that turned into $1 million worth of contracts. So, Alex, what you're saying resonates very well with me, and I'm working it. I'm working it.
You,
And
you know,
thank you.
oh, go ahead.
No, I just need to be quiet. I was gonna go to the next person, but that's okay.
Go
Keep on going.
go ahead. I don't want to be too greedy here.
I do want to say through this process, it takes its toll mentally, physically, stress as you're getting denial. With that gal that we're trying to place with Granger, she took it so personally. She's like, it's me. I'm just, I'm just gonna throw out basically what she's saying. I'm a piece of crap. Nobody wants to hire me. I have zero value. There is just nothing that I can, and she was just diving deep into that depression. And we met with her and said, okay, let's give you the reality of the situation here. We talked to their HR and they've got this many applicants. Um, she's got what's called a CPC certification. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's for medical billing and coding. But on the end of it, you have to have an A. So CPC-A on it. It means apprentice. You have to be working
Wow.
for a year for that A to drop off. Um, that's what's hurting her, because there's all these other CPCs that don't have that. That doesn't mean that she's bad. That doesn't mean she's not a good person, that she can't, offer these, her services out there and make a difference. So we've been working with her to kind of bring her down and let her know, hey, this is just part of that journey. How are you doing on your self-care? Are you doing things to help fill those cups that you've got? That when you get that rejection letter, it empties those cups. Um, so as you guys are going through this journey and pushing yourself out of your comfort zones, make sure you're taking that self-care time. Go on a walk, take breaks as you're doing your application processes. Have a good support team there to build you up. Uh, the self-care piece is so critical, because if you go into an interview and you're wore down and you're feeling that weight, it can show in the interview process. You may not remember, things may not come to your mind as quickly of how to answer those questions. So please, please, please make sure you're taking care of yourself, um, through this process. And I know finances can be tight. You may be using, um, different church services that are available for food. Um, there may be different things going on in your lives, but definitely if you have therapy resources available, um, utilize those to help you for self-care. I can't emphasize that enough.
Okay. Thanks, Mike, for all of that, and Alex. Next up is Dax. He had a question. Had his hand up there for a while.
Yeah, so mine, I put my hand up because it did touch on a lot of what Mike was touching on, and some of it was covered. So mine was about, and actually I'll preface this by saying, like, 100% honestly, and excuse my language, but I just tell people any bullshit they want to hear at this point. It's been 14 months, and the absurd questions I have in interviews, and, like, if you're asking me why I want to work at your company, you're asking me to just make something up, because we both know why I want to work there. And the same thing with roles, because, and this is where I put my hand up at this point, speaking about age, it's not just a matter of, I've found it's not just a matter of going back, only 10 years or whatever. You run into trouble because you have the wrong job titles. And sometimes the job titles, Mike mentioned, having VP level job titles. I know that's been a problem with Tony that he's gone through, where people are like, well, we can't hire you for this manager role because you have a director. And I'm like, well, your manager role pays about 30,000 more than any of my director roles at smaller companies. But they don't want to do the research to understand the difference in like job titles across different industries and all that kind of stuff. And so again, like that's where I come in, where I'm just like, one, I'm just going to tell you what you want to hear, but also, going back to the original thing and what you're talking about with Mike, how do you address that side of things? Like, how do I literally say, you know, yeah, I'm here because the market is bad. That's one thing that I've run into is a lot of people. I have had this question of, why are you, who've been a director for the last decade, why are you here interviewing for this role? And I don't really know how to navigate that, without flat out saying, oh, the job market sucks. And I've tried to sort of like map that into, well, I'm looking for a chance to, you know, get my feet in the door and prove myself and build myself up. That hasn't necessarily paid off so far. How do you even just decided the age, how do you like navigate like the fact that if they actually look at your resume, it's clear that you have all this experience that is undeniable.
The first thing that comes to mind, um, it sounds like, how have you answered that in the past? It sounds like you tell them what they want to hear. What does that sound like? What do you say?
Yeah, I'm saying, well, what I've pivoted to, I don't know what I've said in the past, but over the last few, what I've pivoted to is um, that have been in a lot of smaller companies where it's, um, it's very much all hands on deck with marketing, and so there wasn't room for specialists and specialties, and that I'm looking to get into a bigger company, and I know that often that takes like pivoting back and moving down a step
Okay,
or two in order
let's pause
to
you right there. Let's pause you right there because yeah, you've already lost me. Now, do your authentic. If you were to be you, what would you say?
I honestly don't know, because at this point, again, it's been so long that my authentic at this point is pretty cynical, and I'm very concerned about coming like that sort of like
Well, let's
exhaustion
hear it.
and bitterness that you were talking about.
Let's hear it though. What would you say if you're your authentic self? What would you say?
I would say I've been looking for a job for a long time and I need a job. And I'm willing to come in and do what it takes because this is better at a solid company and it pays more. And I need to get back in the game, whatever that means at this point.
Okay, so recruiters can tell. They can tell when you're saying something that they want to hear. Um, I would definitely tell you to be your authentic self. Write it out, so that it's, obviously appropriate, but be yourself. Say, do you know what? The job market out there is really tight right now. Last year I was laid off. I came into a life challenge where I was laid off and let go from a position. And now I'm in the job market and I'm looking for that next opportunity. It's been tough, and maybe I'll have an opportunity here. I'd love to explore that. But that's why I'm here. I experienced a life change last year and I'm looking for new opportunities. I think you can be yourself. I'm just shooting from the hip here.
Yeah, well, let me address that. And so there's other people that have been looking as long as me, so this might be valuable to them too. Then comes the concern about, which I feel seems to be true, that people don't want to hire people that have been in the job market for a long time. So I've found this in two ways, that people that, there is this hesitation, and then people state this a lot, that they want people that either already have a job or, if you've been more than 6 months out of a job, they're looking at you side-eyed. but also in my case, I've removed the fact that I've done consulting and other kinds of things to keep my skills sharp and keep money coming in over the past year. I've seen that go negatively. And so I have one of my main clients right now. I have my on my LinkedIn that I'm actually like working full time for her in order to like show like it's I mean again like all of these things it's very hard to navigate being like telling the realistic like honest like picture of what's happening versus like how to like sidestep all the possible landmines.
I hear that a lot too, because what happens is we have an experience with an employer, and sometimes we're going to apply it to all employers and be like, because I had this experience, like Granger, for example, where they're like, well, we want 2 pages. You wanted one page resumes, and what we're doing, we're taking a belief system and we're going to apply it to the whole market. I actually think I know some employers that would appreciate your authenticity, that your personality, they would appreciate that upfront approach versus just hearing what they want to hear. Um, and I've seen that, and it comes down to research your employer, take a look at it, make sure we're not applying other negative experiences maybe to that one that you have. But I definitely think your personality, and you're in marketing, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I think the more authentic, because I know that industry is a little bit different as far as they have room for that authenticity. Um, this is my own bias, but like engineers, very linear thinkers, right? Um, no disrespect to our engineers on the call, love you guys. Um,
Whoa.
there's marketing sometimes can be go a little bit more in that free thinking, liberal, be yourself, be authentic. I've seen that, especially out in Park City, that creativity piece. Um, but ultimately, I definitely think don't apply different negative experiences to the whole industry, because you're just going to find yourself trying to adapt in too many ways. And you can kind of drive yourself nuts being like, well, this employer didn't like this over here, so I better not do it over here. That can translate over sometimes, but do the research, take a look at it. Um, we've used that tactic of being your authentic self because we've seen it. Employers are aware this is a rough market right now. There's going to be individuals with gaps. What you want to sell is I am the right fit for this position, even though I have a gap. I'm I'm the right fit for this position. I can help you move forward.
And I think to go with that, Dax, what Alex is saying is, what are they looking for? And do you fit that? If
Yeah.
so, talk about how you do that. This is where we're in sales. And I've said this about everybody, including Alex, and you're the best salesperson for yourself. And we're in sales. Whether you're a salesperson or not, you are
Yeah.
in sales. And every day we're selling ourselves either as a job seeker or for Alex, hey, give us a chance here. We have the right person to fit your company. Just give us a chance. No. Well, I'm back tomorrow. Give me a chance. I mean, we heard that story. And we heard from Mike. We've heard people say, please quit calling. Okay. You
Yeah.
know, and I'm also the one, I call it the Alex mentality, like, okay, well, who else do you know that would benefit from our business? Even though you told me no, I'm not going to I want a referral, at least throw me a bone. I'll go chase it. And I think one thing I told, okay, I'm gonna confess, Tony, what I put Tony on a thing here, and I'm going to pop this in the screen in a minute. But I don't know if Alex, you remember Kerry White, but Kerry White grew to be a VP at SOS Staffing, and
Oh
he
man.
used the word VP all the time on his resume, and he didn't get any calls, and he said put director or manager, and all of a sudden, boom, he got all these. Now Tony comes from a company where first for Wells Fargo has a lot, and so does Jason Trowbridge. I mean, Goldman Sachs has 2,500 VPs, so it's a little bit different than in the typical structure. So I just think Dax, it's kind of what Alex is telling you. Yeah, be yourself and ask the questions about what's a good fit here. and I'll let you know if I fit or not.
Yeah, but if
This-
you change the title on your resume and it doesn't match the LinkedIn, the companies that look at LinkedIn as a verification back to your resume, they're going to ask that question or pass you over, aren't they?
They can, and they can, but you can also put a slash because is the same title called something in different companies? Is it called multiple things? Sometimes. You're right. The word VP, yeah, they're going to see VP, but on your resume, yeah, why did I dumb my resume down? So you call me. I'm tired of people passing over me because I was a VP. And let me ask you, if I have a job and Tony's applying for a job for a VP and or not a VP and it's more individual contributor, is he going to be overqualified? He certainly is. I would say next. And that shouldn't be what we should. We should be like, oh, great. I'm a bargain hunter. I'm going to get the best for a good price. Let's see if he's interested for what I want to pay him. He's got a lot bringing to the table. So sorry. I just had to put my 2 cents in there.
No, that's great, Steve. I like what you said too, because the tactic is owning it. Being like, yeah, I did dumb down my resume because I wanted an opportunity. I wanted to interview and get in front of you. Um, yeah, there's so many different strategies, especially in this market, trying to be creative. If they go to the LinkedIn, I've seen quite a few different recruiters that do that and some that don't. Um, it's just really researching and getting those contacts. I think, Steve, that's probably the biggest piece is, in tandem with doing your application, those that you really want, do the research and get those contacts, meet with those people so that you can get a better lay of the land and understand how to move things forward.
And Carol, it may come up in a conversation. I'm all about having the conversation. I want to have the conversation with people. Okay. Does that answer your question, Dax? A little bit?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Thanks, Alex. And that was especially what you said about adapting all of the trying to adapt in too many different ways to too many different pieces of feedback. That definitely happens. So
Be
appreciate your
yourself.
response.
Be yourself. I think, you're going to lose a lot if you're trying to say what they want to hear. They're just going to tune out. Be authentic. Be yourself. Find that way to communicate, that frustration in a way that is appropriate, of course, but 9 times out of 10, again, I say that a lot, being your authentic self is going to show through a lot more than just saying what they want to hear.
And for
I'll
those who
just
are here,
piggyback as a
hiring
hiring manager. I used to check people's social media profiles, even if they didn't disclose it. I'd go look them up, and that gave me a sense for whether this person was going to be more trouble than they were worth. So, yeah, not just the LinkedIn, but any other place, Facebook, Twitter, whatever.
Well, and Dax, and anybody else who's been in HR, got two HR people here. Well, more than that with Alex. But if we tell people what they want to hear, they can tell if that we really live that story or not. And so it's better to. It's like when we get asked that behavioral based question, and we make up a story thinking if I tell a really good story, they'll hire me. They can see through that was story didn't really happen. You made it up. It's better to be honest and be authentic, as Alex was saying. Speaking of HR people, I've got two since Alex has tried to get into UTA. I got two people who interviewed with UTA, and that's Chris and Rennie. I don't know if they have a comment. I'll throw you both in there. I'll throw two people together.
Love to hear it.
So you got two HR guys here. Got to find Rennie. Where'd you go?
Well, I don't really have a comment other than the being persistent that you did. I mean, obviously that could have potentially backfired, but obviously it didn't. So there was actually a job that I applied for a month ago that was just probably 2 miles away from my house, and I was going to go to the office and drop off my resume, and I was going to bring some type of treat, but I have no clue what the secretary liked or anything. But then I chickened out because that isn't really, that isn't how it's done, right? You apply through the website and you apply through all. So, but at a couple of points, I'm like going, well, I obviously what I'm doing isn't necessarily working. So if I am a little bit unique and a little bit different, then maybe I will stand out. But But I like that story, how you said that, you were persistent, the secretary is a little bit short with you, and now you're their PEO and the gal got the job. So that gives me hope that just keep on putting my head down and keep plugging away.
Fun with it too. When you're dropping off, popcorn, have fun with it. Say, this is my favorite popcorn. I really liked it. I hope you enjoy it. Just have fun with it. Try and, as you're going on this experience, try and enjoy that journey as much as you can. I know you might be nervous being like, dropping off some popcorn, but
Well, I use this analogy really quick to a buddy of mine who works up in Idaho, and he's an executive. This is what he does. He helps finds jobs for executives. And I just said, "Hey, dude, how can I appropriately reenact the scene from Shawshank Redemption where Morgan Freeman at the very end says, 'Rehabilitated'? I don't even know what that means anymore. So go ahead and do your thing because I know you're not gonna give me a parole, And he kind of laughs. He goes, "Dude, you're on the right. You're going the right direction, but you just got to make sure you do it the right way." And look, I haven't been in it as long as most of the guys on this call, most of the ladies on this call, so I'm not taking anything away from them. But it just gets frustrated when you make it to the last round a handful of times and you still get denied. So
what positions have we applied for at UTA? Just so I can help. Was it the HRBP position?
it's an HR business partner role. And I haven't gotten told no yet, so I'm waiting for that.
Did you do the video
I'm waiting
interview
for Rennie to get it and me not to
Both
get
both
it. So
both Reddy and he are competing for it both, and hopefully
for
they.
the HRBP position, right? Business partner role.
yeah, business partner.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct.
we've got somebody. So we've got somebody that applied for that, and they did say that's the position that they've got over 120 positions. We have not heard back on that one. Have you guys heard back at all? Has it been ghost town for you?
No, well, Rennie can speak. As far as I know, we're two of the three finalists, and we're going to find out this week.
Yes,
Oh,
they actually said that they wanted to move forward pretty quickly. I had a very good conversation with them when I sat down with them, and they were very frank that they wanted to move forward as soon as possible with whoever they selected, and that that person would likely, at the time when I had the conversation, which was last Thursday, um, that person would likely come in this week. They would have been notified on Friday, which didn't happen, but would have been notified by Friday and then would have moved into the position sometime mid to late this week so that they could start onboarding and getting moving forward because they've had some issues with uh, a lot of proactiveness or not proactive, but reactiveness in their workspace, and they'd like to start moving forward with being more proactive.
gotcha. I know that they do have some other positions available right now, like the union. If you have any union experience, there's another one that was posted as well. They said they're trying to fill that one pretty aggressively. I think it's between 60 to 70,000 on the HR side. Um, so it sounds like you might be in. You might have gotten the position. That's good feedback for us to kind of know where they're at because we haven't heard anything. Like the video interviews happened, and then it was ghost town from there. And in my mind, I'm like, I think they've moved on, which they have. So I hope you get it, brother. That'll be good.
I hope they both get it.
See,
I hope.
we'll
Yeah.
see.
I hope they need two people and they both get it.
As I,
Although I'm hoping Rennie gets Northrop Grumman.
as I understand it, there was actually supposed to be two positions that were open. It seems like they were advertising one, but when they talked to me about it, they were like, "Yeah, really, there's two positions that we're looking for." So,
I thought there was just
two out
one.
of three sounds really good, and if we both get one, cool.
Yeah, no kidding.
But for me, as I was telling Chris and Steve last week, I'm actually leaning more towards the Northrop Grumman side because that's in my wheelhouse. I still have a military clearance,
Clearance.
so I can still do that kind of stuff. It's closer to my house, and I'm kind of leaning that way. But either way, I'm trying to get out of the unemployment market and get back to work.
Well, it sounds like you're on a good trajectory. If you had final interviews with UTA, that beat out a lot of people that we had in there. Um, and at Northrop Grumman, we've had a hard time with those guys as well, just because our applicants didn't have military clearance. So I mean, you're well ahead on your way there. Yeah, it's HR right now is a difficult field. A lot of people have been laid off in that area. I know Market Star just had an HR position open up as well.
I saw that. Yeah, I haven't applied for it yet, but I did see that. Then Barnes Aerospace, I applied for them last night. They're in Ogden. They had a senior HR generalist role, but the pay's decent. Yeah, the range anyway is decent.
Keep knocking on those doors. You know, I I've been in HR for a long time and decided to start my own business. Um, and it's been an experience. I've learned a lot, being a CEO, learning how to, we have 9 employees. Um, we're just growing, and it's been a learning experience for me, especially through this kind of recession experience that's been going on. I've got to jump off here soon. Steve, was there any other questions? And honestly, I'm learning from you guys. I think you guys have more experience than I do. So
Okay, let's see who is there anybody have one final question as we wrap up here? All right, well, I'm gonna take this so Alex can see all of us. All right. Big round of applause for Alex coming today. Thank you. And Alex, thanks. Thanks for coming from whatever that is, whether it's a gondola car or whatever. I think that's
yeah, it's just in their visitor center here in Park City. I've got some clients to meet with, but guys, seriously, we can all network together. I can learn from you. A lot of you have more experience than I do, so I feel honored to even just be speaking. Um, just resources and tricks that I know. Um, yeah, love to connect. Steve, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you coming. All right.